Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paśatya Deshatarine Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udire. Hare Krishna. The Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the greatest gift to the international, community by Srila Prabhupada. Because before Srila Prabhupada gave his Bhakti Vedanta purports and commentary to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam was only available either in Sanskrit or in Hindi or in regional languages. But there was no international edition or no English edition. So we are all indebted to Srila Prabhupada, because if Srila Prabhupada would not have translated Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, there would not have been any possibility for this generation to access Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada has given us this gift of accessing Bhagavatam. How can we enter into Bhagavat? Is Bhagavata Pade Gaya Bhagavata Snani. If one wants to enter Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, one has to take shelter of a Bhagavata. And that Bhagavat for us is Srila Prabhupada. There is a devotee Bhagavat and there is a book Bhagavat. So we can access the book Bhagavat only through the shelter of a devotee Bhagavat. And that access is provided to us by Srila Prabhupada. We have done the preface. If you remember, when we started the 10th canto before Janmashtami, we studied the preface. Someone remembers? Some of you remember? Or should we take the preface again? If you don't remember, then we will take the preface again. The contents of preface, you remember? Who remembers? Okay, any case, we'll take the preface again. So that will take one class. So it will be a journey for many, many years if we want to study Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam at least once in this lifetime. There are 18,000 verses. This compilation is of 18,000 verses. Srila Prabhupada dedicates his Bhagavatam to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. When we see the dedication of the book, one moment. You can see now. Srila Prabhupada has dedicated Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam as an offering to the lotus feet of his spiritual master, to Srila Prabhupada Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, my spiritual master, on the 26th annual ceremony of his disappearance day. Anyone remembers what is the disappearance day of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur? Anyone remembers the disappearance day of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur? We should be knowing our appearance and disappearance day of our acharyas. It is 1st January 1937. So add up 1937 and 26 years. How much? What is the year then? Unmute and speak. So Prabhupada started his Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam presentation. Yes, what is the year? There shall be.
I could not hear Prabhuji. Yes.
1963.
1963. 53. 37 and 26 is how much? 53.
Yes.
So 1953, Prabhupada presented the first volume of his Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And Prabhupada also quotes that he lives forever by his divine instructions. Who lives forever by his divine instruction? The spiritual master. And the follower lives with him. So we will start with the preface. We must know the present need of human society. And what is that need? Human society is no longer bounded by geographical limits to particular countries or communities. Human society is broader than in the Middle Ages. And the world tendency is towards one state or one human society. So Prabhupada is talking about globalization, that there are no territorial restrictions. So the world is expanding and becoming one unit. So Prabhupada says the idea of spiritual communism, according to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, are based more or less on the oneness of the entire human society, nay, of the entire energy of the living beings. The need is felt by great thinkers to make this a successful ideology. And Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam will fill this need in the human society. So that oneness in the human society, or oneness of the humanity, cutting across borders, countries, region, nations, how that is possible, Prabhupada says, that kind of oneness or spiritual communism is possible only if we accept the teachings of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Prabhupada is saying that Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam will fill the need in human society. It begins therefore with the aphorism of the Vedanta philosophy, Janmadi Asya Yataha. That means there is one single source, or there is one single foundation or root from whom everything else is emanated. So if we have the one source of our origin, then there can be oneness. And that is established through the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. That is the first verse of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. The Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam begins where Bhagavad Gita ends. What is the final instruction in Bhagavad Gita? What is the final instruction in Bhagavad Gita? Final instruction in Bhagavad Gita. Most of you, why you are silent? You have not read Bhagavad Gita. Ganesh, what is the final instruction of Bhagavad Gita?
Where there is Krishna and Arjuna is there, there is a victory.
Instruction, Baba. I am asking instruction. Where? What is the final? I am not asking what is the final verse. What is the final instruction Krishna gave in Bhagavad Gita? What we have studied for 3 years Bhagavad Gita. Yes, Pranab Prabhu?
सर्वधर्मान परित्यज्य मामेकं
Yes.
शरणं
Yeah. Sarv dharmani parityajya mamekam sharanam. So Bhagavatam begins where Bhagavad Gita ends. So Bhagavad Gita establishes the fact that Krishna is the root, Krishna is the source, Krishna is the origin of everything. And this is from where Bhagavatam begins. Janmadi asyatakam. So Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, to establish the idea of common cause, how we can have the common cause? When we have the common father. Like Krishna is the seed-giving father of every species of life. Not only the human species, but each and every species, including the human species. So Prabhupada says that the human society at the present moment is not in the darkness of oblivion. It has made rapid progress in the field of material comforts, education, and economic development. So these are the laurels of the modern society. What is it? Material comfort, education, and economic development throughout the entire world. But there is a pinprick somewhere in the social body at large. And therefore, there are large-scale quarrels. But having achieved material comforts, so-called material education and economic development, still the society is not at peace. Why? Because it is experiencing large-scale quarrels. What is large-scale quarrel means? Wars, disharmony, disagreements, differences, even over less important issues. There is a need of a clue as to how humanity can be one in peace, friendship, and prosperity with a common cause. Prabhupada says there is a need of a clue. The modern man does not have that clue. So Prabhupada is saying Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam will fill this need. For it is a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society. It's a very beautiful sentence. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam should be introduced also in the schools and colleges, where it is recommended by the great student devotee Prahlad Maharaj in order to change the demoniac face of society. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam should be introduced, okay. Kaumara charet pragya dharman bhagavatam iha durlabham manusham janma tadapi adhruvam arthadam. This is the verse which is recited by Prahlad Maharaj. This is one of the first verse which he opens his instructions or his teachings to his batchmates, to his schoolmates. They were all the sons of the demoniac race. So similarly, he transformed the face of the demoniac society, and today we see there is rampant demoniac society. So how it can be transformed? So Prabhupada is giving this clue, this certain solution is if Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is introduced in schools and colleges. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is not just a book, it is a culture. It presents the culture. So you remember we discussed about culture when we were studying Śrīmad-Bhāgavad-Gita. Prabhupada talks about culture. Three things Prabhupada talks about. Prabhupada talks about education, culture and devotion. Someone remembers? So what by education we get? From education we get knowledge. And from culture what do we get? We get the experience. Without culture we cannot have the experience. And with devotion we get the realizations. So the entire human society, which is having an objective of unification, that unification can only be brought about if we keep Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in the center. And how to begin? Prabhupada is saying, as Prahlad Maharaj is recommending, at the age of Kaumara. Kaumara means from the age of 5. When one should begin studying Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? At the age of 5. So we are very, very late. Anyone who is near to 5? None of you will be even 25, even more than 25. Anyone who is below 25? Maybe Sunny. Sunny, what is your age?
Prabhuji, 29.
Oh, no, we are very, very late. So, but now we should not let this opportunity go begging. The Prabhupada is quoting Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj began his Bhagavatam classes at the age of 5. So disparity in human society is due to lack of principle in a godless civilization. There is God or the Almighty One from whom everything emanates, by whom everything is maintained, and by whom everything is merged to rest. So that is creation, that is maintenance, and also destruction. So the source and the force both are the same, and they are only the one. Who is that? That is what we will come to know from this verse, the first verse of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Janmadi asya yataha. Material science had tried to find the ultimate source of creation very insufficiently. But it is a fact that there is one ultimate source of everything that be. This ultimate source is explained rationally and authoritatively in the beautiful Bhagavatam or Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. That one ultimate source of everything. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the transcendental science, not only for knowing the ultimate source of everything, but also for knowing our relationship with. And our duty towards perfection of the human society on the basis of this perfect knowledge. It is a powerful reading matter in the Sanskrit language. And it is now rendered into English elaborately, so that simply by a careful reading, how it has to be read? Carefully, cautiously. One will know God perfectly well. This is the benediction, the blessing which Srila Prabhupada is bestowing on all his readers. That simply by a careful reading, one will know God perfectly well. So much so that the reader will be sufficiently educated to defend himself from the onslaught of atheists. Over and above this, the reader will be able to convert others to accepting God as a concrete principle. So whoever studies Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, he will have conviction. He will cultivate his relationship, his love for Krishna. And not only that, he'll be able to convert others from being non-devotee to become devotee. So that much of purity or that much of power will be bestowed in his heart. How? Simply by careful reading of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. In preaching, what is the force? Purity is the force. So that force will be bestowed by whoever studies Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam begins with the definition of the ultimate source. It is a bona fide commentary on the Vedanta Sutra by the same author. So this is the final conclusion given by Srila Vyasadeva after giving all the various Vedic literatures and concluding it by giving it in the form of Vedanta Sutra. But as we know, as we will study in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, even after giving so much, 18 Purāṇas, more than 108 Upanishads, Aranyakas, so much details of the Vedic literature, the heart of Vyasadeva was not satisfied. And when he meditated on his spiritual master, Srila Narad Muni, so Narad Muni will appear. This is how Bhagavatam will begin. When we will study the 5th chapter, 6th chapter, we will discuss that. And how Bhagavatam was conceptualized and how it was presented by Srila Vyasadeva because of the discontentment of the heart of Srila Vyasadeva. And Narad Muni appears and Narad Muni rectifies Vyasadeva. And Narad Muni instructs him to give the conclusion of all the Vedic literatures. And that is the form of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So Prabhupada says that Srila Vyasadeva, and gradually it develops into 9 cantos up to the highest state of God realization. The only qualification one needs to study this great book of transcendental knowledge is to proceed step by step cautiously and not jump forward haphazardly as an ordinary book. So we will only be attempting to follow into the footsteps as instructed by Srila Prabhupada. Whatever time it may take, even it may take a lifetime, but we will proceed cautiously as Prabhupada is saying, verse by verse, step by step, and not haphazardly. It should be gone through chapter by chapter, one after another. The reading matter is arranged with its original Sanskrit text, its English transliteration, synonyms, translation, and purpose, so that one is sure to become a God-realized soul at the end of finishing the first 9 cantos. This is the beauty of Srila Prabhupada's presentation. That before one enters the 10th canto, who can enter into the 10th canto? One who is God-realized. One who is become a pure devotee of the Supreme Lord. Then he can enter into the 9th canto, 10th canto. So Prabhupada is again stuffing this Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam with this, which is compact with blessings and love from Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada is gifting it to all his readers, to all his followers, to all his disciples, to all his friends and well-wishers, whoever studies Srila Prabhupada's Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. What will be the result? That he is sure to become a God-realized person. The 10th canto is distinct from the first 9 cantos because it deals directly with the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. One will be unable to capture the effect of the 10th canto without going through the first 9 cantos. We did not jump into the Leelas of Krishna into the 10th canto. We were only concerned about Krishna's appearance because of Janmashtami. So Prabhupada is making it very clear that one will be unable to capture the effects of the 10th canto. What is that? The Leela. The Leelas which Krishna exhibited, his pastime, his pleasure pastimes in Braja, in Mathura, and in Dwarika. Unless and until one has studied the first 9 cantos. So Prabhupada is saying one will be unable to capture the effect of the 10th canto without going through the first 9 cantos. The book is complete in 12 cantos, each independent. But it is good for all to read them in small installments, one after another. Then Prabhupada takes a humble position. He is a world Acharya, the founder Acharya, but still, as a Vaishnava, Srila Prabhupada is submitting that I must admit my faculties in presenting Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. But still, I am hopeful of its good reception by the thinkers and leaders of society on the strength of the following statement of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. This is again from the conversation between Narad Muni and Srila Vyasadeva. Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratishlokam avadhavati api namani anantasya yasho ankitani yad shanvanti gayanti grihnanti sadhava shanvanti gayanti grihnanti sadhava. On the other hand, that literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, form, and the pastimes of the unlimited Supreme Lord is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed towards bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of the world's misdirected civilization. So Prabhupada said that Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire world, society. So Prabhupada is saying here, so this is the verse which is in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam itself, Vyasadeva has compiled, that the transcendental words will bring about a revolution in the impious lives of the world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, Shranvanti. Gayanti means they are sung. And Grihnanti, very important, is are accepted. By whom? Not by ordinary people, by sadhava. And who are sadhava? By purified men who are thoroughly honest. So Prabhupada presented this on December 15, 1962. And in the introduction of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, so let us see the introduction. The conception of God and the conception of the absolute truth are not on the same level. The Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam hits on the target of the absolute truth. So please see, please mark Srila Prabhupada's words very carefully. Prabhupada says the conception of God and the conception of absolute truth are not on the same level. And Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam targets this absolute truth. The conception of God indicates the controller, whereas the conception of absolute truth indicates the summum bonum, or the ultimate source of all energies. There is no difference of opinion about the personal feature of the God as the controller, because the controller cannot be impersonal. Of course, modern government, especially democratic government, is impersonal to some extent. But ultimately, the chief executive head is a person. And the impersonal feature of government is subordinate to the personal feature. So without a doubt, whenever we refer to control over others, we must admit the existence of a personal feature. Because there are different controllers for different managerial positions. There may be many small gods. So in a way, whoever is having some position, some post, or someone as subordinate below him. So to that extent, he has the power to control them. So there are, Prabhupada is saying that there are many small gods. Because there are different controllers for different managers, there may be many small gods. According to Bhagavad Gita, any controller who has some specific ordinary power is called Vibhuti Mat Sattvaha. Who remembers the verse? Or controller empowered by the Lord. We will keep revising Bhagavad Gita. as we study Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Vibhuti mat sattvaha. Where did we study Vibhuti mat sattvaha? What is the verse? Pradeep Prabhu?
Yad yad vibhutimat sattvam Śrīmad.
Yes. Yad yad vibhuti mat sattvam Śrīmad urjitam eva tat tat eva vigachatvam mam eko amsa sambhava. This is the final verse of the 10th chapter. Krishna is exhibiting his opulence. So Krishna is the vibhuti mat sattvaha. From him, all opulence and all splendor is exhibited. So the extraordinary power is called Vibhuti Mat Sattva or controller empowered by the Lord. There are very Vibhuti Mat Sattvas, controllers of God with various specific powers. But the absolute truth is one without a second. The Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam designates the absolute truth or the summum bonum as the Param Satyam. So we will see in the first verse. So please try to understand, this is not talking about many different controllers or many different gods or demigods. The target of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the supreme absolute truth, that Param Satyam. The author of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Srila Vyasadeva, first offers his respectful obeisances unto the Param Satyam absolute truth. And because the Param Satyam is the ultimate source of all energies, the Param Satyam is the supreme person. The God or the controllers are undoubtedly person, but the Param Satyam from whom the gods derive power of control is the supreme person. The Sanskrit word Ishvara, controller, conveys the import of God. But the supreme person is called Parameshwara or the supreme Ishvara. There can be many Ishvaras as we have discussed. There can be many gods. Whoever is having any post, any position, any demigod, to that extent he can be called an Ishvara. But Parameshwara is only one. The supreme person of Parameshwara is the supreme conscious personality. And because he does not derive any power from any other source, he is supremely independent. In the Vedic literature, Brahma is described as the supreme god or the head of all other gods like Indra, Chandra, and Varuna. But the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam confirms that even Brahma is not independent as far as his power and knowledge are concerned. He received knowledge in the form of Vedas from the Supreme Person who resides within the heart of every living being. That Supreme Personality knows everything directly and indirectly. Individual infinitesimal person who are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality may know directly and indirectly everything about their bodies or external features. But the Supreme Personality knows everything, both his external and internal features. That is the Kshetra and the Kshetragya. There are two Kshetragya we discussed. That is the Jiva and the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord knows about everyone. The word Janmadiyasya suggests that the source of all production, maintenance, or destruction is the same supreme conscious person. Even in our present experience, we can know that nothing is generated from inert matter. But inert matter can be generated from the living entity. For instance, by contact with the living entity, the material body develops into a working machine. Men with a poor fund of knowledge mistake the bodily machine to be the living being. But the fact is that the living being is the basis of the bodily machine. The bodily machine is useless as soon as the living spark is away from it. Similarly, the original source of all material energy is the Supreme Person. This fact is expressed in all Vedic literature, and all the exponents of the spiritual science have accepted this truth. The living force is called Brahman. And one of the greatest Acharya teachers, namely Sripad Shankaracharya, has preached that Brahman is substance, whereas the cosmic world is category. The original source of all energies is the living force, and he is logically accepted as the Supreme Person. He is therefore conscious of everything past, present, and future, and also of each and every corner of his manifestations, both material and spiritual. An imperfect living being does not even know what is happening within his own personal body. He eats his food but does not know how this food is transformed into energy or how it sustains the body. When a living being is perfect, he is aware of everything that happens. And since the Supreme Person is all perfect, it is quite natural that he knows everything in all details. Consequently, the perfect personality is addressed in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam as Vasudeva, or one who lives everywhere in full consciousness and in full possession of his complete energy. All of this is clearly explained in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and the reader has ample opportunity to study this critically. In the modern age, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu preached the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam by practical demonstration. It is easier to penetrate into the topics of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam through the medium of Sri Chaitanya's cosmos mercy. Therefore, a short sketch of his life and precepts is inserted herein to help the readers understand the real merit of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. It is imperative that one learn the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam from a person Bhagavata. Bhagavata pade kiya, Bhagavata sthani. Unless and until one approaches a person Bhagavatam, one cannot know Bhagavatam. The person Bhagavatam is one whose very life is Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in practice. Since Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the absolute personality of Godhead, he is both Bhagavan and Bhagavatam in person and in sound. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is taking the position of the person Bhagavata. He is an Acharya. He is taking the position of an Acharya. And Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is also the description, and it is also called the sound incarnation. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the sound incarnation of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, his process of approaching the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is practical for all people of the world. It was his wish that Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam be preached in every nook and corner of the world by those who happen to take their birth in India. Very famous verse. You all know this verse. What is the verse? Devashish, what is this verse of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? A little louder, please. There is a lot of background noise. बोलो उसी में बोलो, माइक्रोफोन में बोलो. बोलिए धोलामणि को.
श्री कृष्ण प्रभु जी, भारत भूमि से होइले जन्मजार, जन्म सार्थक करी कर परोपकार.
भारत भूमि तो होइले मनुष्य जन्मजार. But who can do? Who is actually in this human form, whose consciousness is human. भारत भूमि तो होइले मनुष्य जन्मजार, जन्म सार्थक करी कर परोपकार. Prabhupada is saying it was his wish that Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam be preached in every nook and corner of the world by those who happen to take their birth in India. This Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the science of Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead, of whom we have preliminary information from the text of the Bhagavad Gita. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that anyone, regardless of what he is, who is well versed in the science of Krishna, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and Bhagavad Gita, can become an authorized preacher or preceptor in the science of Krishna. This is another verse. Very, very famous verse. Prabhupada quotes it many times. and it is there in the Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, that anyone, regardless of who he is, who is well versed in the science of Krishna, that is Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and Bhagavad Gita, can become an authorized preacher or preceptor in the science of Krishna. Which verse is this? Not there, Shil Prabhu, someone else. Yes, Ramya, boliye.
কিবা বিপ্র কিবা ন্যাসী
Yes, kiba vipra kiba nyasi shudra keno noy jai Krishna tattva veda sei guru hoy. There is a need for the science of Krishna in human society for the good of the all-suffering humanity of the world. And we simply request all leaders of all nations to pick up this science of Krishna for their own good and for the good of society and for the good of the world's people. So there is a short sketch of the life and teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the preacher of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. This will run into almost 30 pages. A short sketch. Can anyone answer why Prabhupada has given these Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life here as an introduction in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? Why Prabhupada in the introduction is having his readers study the life sketch of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu before entering into the real cantos of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? You should participate, speak. You studied that. We've read that. Why only two devotees have to answer, others are waiting? Sunny, आप बोलिए. हमने discuss कर लिया वो. We've already discussed that. Manoram Prabhu, unless and until you are asked, you don't speak. This is not a good practice.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. In introduction only, if I could catch this message, Prabhuji, it was told that we cannot understand the knowledge of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam without the help of a personal person Bhagavatam. So here Lord Chaitanya is that person Bhagavatam who taught through his life the knowledge of Bhagavatam, and he preached the knowledge. So that is why the life history has been spoken, so that by knowing his life history and teachings, we can take up the knowledge of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Prabhuji.
Yes. Yeah. So unless and until we have the mercy, Prabhupada said, unless and we have the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we cannot access Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And the life of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the practical demonstration of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in person. And as you rightly said, he is a person Bhagavatam. And it is his desire, it is his benediction that the message of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam be preached to every nook and corner of the world. So without having his mercy, without knowing him, and without accessing his mercy, we cannot understand Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So please understand and appreciate what Srila Prabhupada is enabling. He is enabling all the unfortunate souls to become recipient of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, so that they can access Bhagavatam and they can become God realized. A very, very deep compassion of Srila Prabhupada is exhibited. Srila Prabhupada is presenting the life sketch of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the incarnation to deliver the most fallen. And everyone in Kali Yuga is fallen. So how they can be elevated from their fallen position is if they receive the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhupada is introducing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So my request is that this is your homework. And it should not take more than 1 week. Maximum 1 week. In 1 week's time, all of us, including myself, again, will read the full introduction of the sketch which Srila Prabhupada is presenting. And in our next class, tomorrow will be the spiritual scientist class in IARA, that we will continue the 4th chapter. And Sunday I have a class in the evening. I have to go there and give. So Sunday I won't be able to take class. So whenever next we have the class, we will start from the first verse of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which is Janmadiyasya Yatana. Believe me, this is the study of our lifetime. So kindly be very sincere, put your best effort. Please read through the life sketch of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu if you really want to get the benefit of study of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Do not allow the laziness or craziness in our consciousness to stop us or prevent us from going to. Rather, you have weekend, read it on the weekend itself. Reading 25-30 pages is not very big. 3 hours is sufficient. 2 to 3 hours is sufficient. So study it very deeply with a prayerful, meditative mood, requesting Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to allow us not only to read, but to relish. As you will come into the second verse, you will come to know Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is not just reading material. It is for relishing. Rasika, Bhuva. So, by the mercy, we can relish each and every word, each and every verse of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Okay, I'll stop here today and I open it up for you. If you have any question or if you want to say something, please feel free. Hare Krishna. In passive mode, we won't be able to access Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. We have to be active. Yes, there shall go.
You told that Bhagavad Gita establishes that Lord Krishna is the root of everything. So which everything has emanated. But we hear that Prabhuji Bhagavad Gita established that Lord Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. That is the conclusion. These are both one and the same.
Supreme Personality of Godhead, yes, and from him he is the source of all origin. So the root is the origin from where the tree emanates, isn't it? So what is the confusion?
Yes, Prabhuji, both are same, Prabhuji.
That is what Srila Prabhupada mentioned. That is supreme absolute truth is the personality. The supreme personality, his person. And he is the one from whom everyone else is coming. That we will discuss in the first verse itself. It's a very detailed discussion of how is the source, how is the root, how is the foundation of anyone, of everyone and everything. There is very elaborate commentary by Srila Prabhupada on this first verse itself. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he was delivering his discourse on this first verse of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in Dhaka, he spoke for 30 days consecutively. 30 days on this verse. Okay, anyone else? Gaurangi wants to say something. She is right there, bright on the screen. Smiling, very good. Make her hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. It will be even better. Prahlad Maharaj is saying, Kaumar Acharya, the before Kaumar, she will study, she will hear Bhagavatam. If she can continue to hear, that will be a great boon, a benediction. We were giving our exams today, so there was one question on the impression of the childhood. That is Parikshit Maharaj's instance, that Parikshit Maharaj had the impression of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When he was right in the womb of his mother. So we see the life of Acharyas, they had this impression, this samskar of Krishna consciousness right from their birth. And this samskar enabled them to be fully Krishna conscious and to make others become Krishna conscious. So such children are privileged if right from their birth they get a Krishna conscious environment, culture to practice. Hare Krishna. So I'll stop here. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai.